The kingdom buzzed with excitement as the most prestigious tournament approached, drawing competitors and spectators from across the land. An event was set to occur in just a few months. He stood among the finest giant knights in the world, a testament to strength and valor. The entire group immersed themselves in rigorous training, pushing their limits with unwavering determination to seize the coveted title. He was renowned as one of the greatest giant riders in history. However, there was one particular boy who dedicated that time to. Months passed, each one blending seamlessly into the next as time unfolded its relentless march. He lay peacefully in a deep slumber. He feasted on goblin meat. He observed his peers as they diligently trained, their determination evident in every movement. The protagonist discovered that others held a collective belief. The protagonist had already resigned himself to the inevitability of defeat and merely occupying space. Even the general holds the belief that he is. He engaged in the act to taunt him and wishes to. He delivered a swift kick. The protagonist deftly maneuvered the child out of harm's way. On the day of the examination, they revealed the commencement of the first phase. It was a chaotic free-for-all. The knights banded together, uniting their strengths for a common cause. He aimed to eliminate the boy who had never undergone any training. They regarded him as an embarrassment, a source of shame that they could not tolerate. They encircled him. He found himself cornered, with no escape in sight. A warm smile spread across his face. He delivered a powerful punch with such force. The knight's colossal figure soared through the air, propelled by an unseen force. The others made their attempts. Fortune seemed to strike in a simultaneous onslaught. However, he stood prepared for whatever lay ahead. He systematically eliminated them one after another. He managed to evade every attack effortlessly, avoiding even a single hit. One of the knights had been observing him intently. He resolved to launch an assault. As the punch connects with his chest, a shocking impact reverberates through his body. The colossal figure of the drowsy child loomed over everything. The man suddenly stiffens, caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events. The colossal giant remained utterly unperturbed, showing no sign of flinching. As he entered the room, a palpable tension filled the air. He retaliated with sharp intensity. He delivered a powerful punch directly into the knight's gut. The giant soared through the air, propelled by an unseen force. He tumbles to the ground, utterly vanquished. The boy who had never undergone any training. He systematically dismantled them one by one. He emerged as the most formidable giant rider of all. The atmosphere was thick with disbelief as everyone stood frozen in shock. He struggled to comprehend the enigmatic nature of the child before him. He gained strength without undergoing any formal training. The young boy was known as Kong Gain. He had not always been this way. Years ago, he was nothing more than a humble beggar. Enduring daily beatings became a grim routine for him, at the hands of bullies. For someone considered insignificant, eventually he grew weary of. He felt utterly defeated and contemplated surrendering to the despair that engulfed his existence. With his last breath escaping him, he recalled the memories of his past life. It became evident that he held the title of Mr. He was a champion of the Olympia, revered for his unparalleled achievements in the realm of athletics. As was customary in tales of this nature, the mysterious figure known as Trucken makes its appearance. With a sudden burst of energy, the scene erupted into action. He found himself unexpectedly transported to this new world. A man bravely intervened, rescuing him from the clutches of drowning. He escorted him back to his home. Furthermore, he offered him sustenance, and the protagonist focused intently on his tasks, immersing himself in the demands of work. His ultimate aim was to forge a life of his own. He began his training, applying the knowledge he had acquired. He had been awakened from his past life. Several months later, he found himself surrounded by a bustling crowd. He was merely an ordinary commoner, indistinguishable from the crowd around him. He observed the commencement of the annual test, anticipation coursing through him. The protagonist found every moment infused with a sense of anticipation. The boy seizes an opportunity to attempt lifting the renowned demonic stone. Whoever succeeds in lifting, it begins to transcend its status as a commoner. He rises to the esteemed rank of a knight. Those who he attempted but ultimately faltered, resulting in a painful strike. The jolt of electricity surged through him, nearly pushing him to the brink of unconsciousness. Emerging from the stone, fear gripped everyone, leaving them too intimidated to make an attempt. Amidst the throng of people, the protagonist stood out. With his hand elevated, he signaled for attention. He decided to test his fortune, which even transcended expectations. He caught the official off guard. The protagonist confidently ascended the stage. He pressed his hands firmly against the cold surface of the stone. He poured every ounce of his being into the endeavor. The protagonist's entire form. The energy surged violently, ripping him apart with an overwhelming force. He heaved the stone upward with determination. A wave of disbelief swept through the crowd, leaving everyone in stunned silence. He found it hard to comprehend that someone had finally accomplished the feat. The child released the stone from his grasp. He confidently stepped forward and introduced himself. Kong Gyeon stood at the center of attention, embodying a presence that commanded respect and intrigue. After a period of time had passed, he felt a deep sense of honor bestowed upon him by the. He ascended to the rank of king and earned his place as a knight within the kingdom. Kong proclaimed his unwavering loyalty with conviction. In the presence of the entire crowd, he presented it as a thoughtful gift. He was bestowed with an enchanted magic sword for the upcoming assignments that awaited him. As the moment approached for him to select his squire, he summoned Captain Davis with a commanding voice, the only adult who had stepped up to care for him following the tragic death of his parents. The following moment, Captain Davis strode into his room, the weight of the day evident in his demeanor. She alerted him that the train was on the verge of departure. The villagers surrounded him, showering their heartfelt congratulations and warm wishes. He stands as the first commoner to transform his life dramatically. He sprinted towards the train, urgency propelling him forward. He encounters an exceptionally muscular individual. He was a formidable figure, radiating strength and authority. Cults Black, the figure commanding leadership over them, held a position of authority within the group. With that, his journey commenced. The duration extended over 5 long days. They journeyed onward until they arrived at the Colossal Knight's training grounds. As the journey unfolded, Cult hurled a shimmering magic stone into the air. He landed softly onto Kang's lap. He instructed him to complete 30 repetitions. After a moment of contemplation, the protagonist began to assess his surroundings with renewed determination. After several hours of intense focus, he finally completed the task at hand. The exercise had utterly exhausted him. Cult remarked that a considerable journey lay ahead before they could unlock the magic power. He instructed him to complete an additional 30 repetitions. Kong struggled to comprehend the situation. He refocused his attention and resumed the exercise with determination. With each passing moment, the tension in the air thickened. With each repetition, he could feel his muscles straining under the intense pressure. At a pivotal moment, a surge of magical energy coursed through the air. A surge of energy coursed through his body. A sensation coursed through every inch of his being. He even enhanced his abilities. Cult stood in astonishment as he watched him unleash the dormant power. After only a single day of rigorous training, the journey unfolded without a hitch, characterized by an easy flow and tranquility. However, that fleeting moment of tranquility would not endure for much longer. As the sun dipped below the horizon, marking the end of another day, David advised the young boy to manage his stamina more wisely and reduce the intensity of his training sessions. However, he finds himself overlooked by those around him. Reflecting on his thoughts, the protagonist realizes that the magic which once felt like a mere thin thread has now transformed into an intricate web reminiscent of a spider's creation. The protagonist completed his final repetition. In response, the man declared that this was the ideal moment to begin training. The revelation struck that each time the young boy wielded magic, it drained his willpower. As his will grew stronger, harnessing magical abilities became increasingly effortless, creating a perpetual cycle of enhancement. He felt elated to have achieved level 21 in his magical prowess. He settled onto a nearby bench, seeking a moment of respite. He reflects on the incredible strength he has gained over time. However, the protagonist faced a pressing challenge. Each time his magical energy surged within him, his body began to dismantle various cells, systematically targeting both fat and muscle. As a proud bodybuilder, he remained resolute in his determination to prevent such an occurrence. After some time had passed, the captain exhaled in relief, savoring the return of his normal breathing. In stark contrast to Jian, who displayed irritation at their departure from the high-gravity zone, the atmosphere shifted around them. Suddenly, an unexpected turn of events unfolds. The driver issued a stern warning. The protagonist realized they had fallen into a trap, ambushed by a horde of goblins. During the Great War, a relentless clash ensued as gods, demons, and dragons consumed by hatred waged brutal battles against one another, leading to their eventual annihilation. The devastating massacre had left a profound impact. Cursed beings emerged into existence. The protagonist's excitement surged as he grasped the thrilling reality that he would finally encounter monsters up close. The protagonist observed as the creatures thundered toward the carriage with relentless ferocity. He soon deduces that the enemies possess an impressive 700 magic power. Their physical strength surpassed that of an ordinary man by a factor of 10. Adding to the peculiar spectacle, their bodies emitted a swirling steam reminiscent of fresh loaves emerging from a hot oven. The driver reaches for A. He grabbed the weapon and unleashed a barrage of gunfire. A goblin crumpled to the ground, defeated, yet it swiftly rises again, undeterred even after sustaining a bullet bullet wound to the head. Now, it seethed with an intensity that was 20 times more furious than before. Colt rose to his feet, extending his claws with a sharp flick of his wrists. He resembled Wolverine in many ways. He swung the door open, a grin spreading across his face. The protagonist comes to the startling realization that he has been journeying alongside a genuine monster. The protagonist burst onto the scene with unwavering determination. The knight skillfully dispatched several foes in a single, fluid motion. With a fierce shout, Kong expressed that he anticipated nothing less from an individual holding the prestigious black rank. The driver cautioned that the trees swayed violently, a foreboding sign of the brewing storm. The crowd suddenly comprehended that a frantic horde of goblins was scurrying away from an unseen threat. Suddenly, a colossal ogre erupted from the dense foliage, dwarfing the other creatures that appeared no larger than mere cockroaches in comparison. Upon inspecting the creature, he discovered that it possessed a staggering 15,000 magic power. The protagonist questions whether this situation is merely a cruel joke. The knight commanded the carriage to alter its course. He instructed the driver to return to the top deck. He prepared to unleash the formidable power of the heavy artillery cannon. Once he takes his place, the protagonist faced a daunting challenge. An overwhelming horde of goblins loomed before him. They began to fall the moment they were struck. The ogre relentlessly charged forward, showing no signs of slowing down. Colt declared his intention to draw a line, determined to prevent them from being captured. Reflecting on the matter, Guillaume comes to the understanding that regardless of a knight's strength, engaging in combat with an ogre posed an extraordinary level of danger. The leader arrived, instructing the boy to equip his boost pack. With determination, he accomplishes the task and inquires if there is any way he can assist further. The knight cast a stern gaze and declared that the safest course of action was to remain inside the carriage, emphasizing his need to arrive at their destination without a single scratch. After donning a peculiar garment, he felt an unexpected surge of confidence. He donned his armor and seized a sword with determination. The darkness began to shimmer with an eerie green glow. Before departing, he instructs the driver to safeguard the carriage at all costs. The driver confidently stated that he had received. He marveled at the leader's extraordinary ability to manipulate the wind with such finesse. It became evident that only a select few knights possessed the ability to awaken supernatural powers, and Kong was among them. The driver exuberantly declared that victory was all but assured, raising his voice in celebration as he continued to fire. Soaring through the air, Colt deftly approached the formidable ogre. He touched down gracefully behind it. He commanded it to tumble forward. The creature complied with the command. It swung its club violently as it pivoted, ready to strike. Inside the carriage, both the protagonist and David found themselves astonished by the leader's astonishing speed. The ogre struggled to match the protagonist's astonishing speed, unable to keep pace. The knight skillfully engages multiple foes simultaneously, demonstrating his exceptional combat prowess. The goblins suddenly surged into motion, their feet pounding the ground as they fled in panic. With palpable excitement coursing through him, the protagonist proclaimed that the real game was about to commence. The creature relentlessly launched its assault, striking again and again, but ultimately finds himself receiving. He felt a sharp impact in the lower leg. As the silence stretched on, Black's expression shifted to one of concern. Without warning, the opponent's body began to swell ominously, and it unleashed all its pent-up fury. This enhances its explosive speed significantly. Having skillfully evaded several more attacks, the knight found himself unexpectedly taken aback, causing widespread panic among the crowd. One goblin, however, remained unscathed. He sprinted furiously, unwavering in his pursuit of the carriage that continued to pull away. In a frenzy of desperation, the driver unleashed a barrage of gunfire, his voice rising in panic as he implored the creature to keep its distance. At long last, a bullet struck it squarely, hitting its mark with lethal precision. Yet, the monstrous creature stubbornly clung to the vehicle's frame. Even in his wounded state, he pressed on. The man discarded the gun and began fiercely hacking at it with an axe. Inside, Kong understood that making the right move in that moment was crucial. Failure to do so would spell disaster. The driver began shouting for assistance, his voice piercing through the air in desperation. The protagonist dashed toward his sword, urgency propelling him forward. The protagonist dashed up the stairs with urgency. As he witnesses the unfolding events, he resolved to concentrate all of his magical energy into one devastating blow. The scene shifted back to the knight, who had narrowly evaded a lethal strike. His voice rang out in a fierce shout. He declared that it was finally his moment to unleash everything he had. Flames erupted, engulfing the surroundings in a fierce blaze. A powerful surge erupted from the rear of his armor. Suddenly, the man soared into the sky, defying gravity with astonishing speed. Meanwhile, he relentlessly struck the ogre in various vulnerable spots. As Colt re-entered the scene, he issued issued a stern warning that the confrontation was far from over. Yet, the protagonist presses forward with unwavering determination. He unleashed a powerful assault, channeling all of his mana into the attack. The protagonist's sword shimmered with a menacing glint, poised for battle. The blade, radiating a deep and intense blue, arced swiftly toward the goblin's throat. With a frantic shout, the driver attempted to retreat from the ominous presence of the creature's lifeless form. The knight's strategy proved successful as well. He skillfully obstructed the monster's advance, preventing it from drawing any nearer to the carriage. As they returned to the carriage, they were taken aback as they witnessed the child wielding cursed energy. Grinning like a maniac, John radiated excitement as he reveled in the exhilarating prospect of completely depleting his mana. Inside, the leader meticulously wrapped a bandage around his wounded head. He marveled at the peculiar sight of a novice effortlessly defeating a goblin, despite having only been acquainted with the cursed stone for less than a week. He contemplates the possibility that the child could possess extraordinary intelligence. The protagonist pivots and inquires about their plans for the creature's lifeless form. Repositioning his hat atop his head, the man confidently declares that he holds the freedom to do as he pleases with it, even considering selling it at the training center. The protagonist's eyes widen in disbelief upon learning that monster meat possesses an extraordinary quality of not rotting, prompting him to eagerly inquire if this revelation means he can consume it. Shaking his head, the knight dismissed the rumor that consuming monster meat enhances cursed energy, recounting his own experience where he had merely suffered from a stomach ache after giving it a try. Despite the circumstances, the child confidently reassured everyone that he would be fine. As he contemplated the convenience of having access to a nutrition information window, goblin meat emerged as a crucial ingredient for harnessing cursed energy alongside various other components. It resembled a type of protein, yet he endeavored to remain indifferent. The leader dismissed the concern, asserting that whether the kid suffered from food poisoning was not his responsibility. Having expertly roasted a piece to eliminate the toxins, he grimaced at the unpleasant odor, yet a memory flickered in his mind. He had never consumed protein shakes in his past life for their flavor. He resolves to indulge in it regardless. He held his breath and swallowed in a single, determined motion. David arrived, his brow furrowed in disbelief as he questioned who on earth would dare to consume monster meat. Black chuckled, remarking that the kid likely felt as though he were gnawing on a boot sole. Unbeknownst to him, John genuinely finds the taste remarkably delightful. Having roasted 2 additional pieces, he graciously extended an offer to the captain and the driver. He remarked that one cannot form a judgment solely based on the scent. Rising to his feet, the knight requested a piece and expressed his willingness to give it a try. This prompted the other 2 men to join in and indulge as well. Moments later, the group stood in astonishment as they savored the meat, marveling at its exquisite top-tier quality. The leader marvels at the exquisite creation, believing it to be so divine that it must surely have been crafted by celestial beings. He eagerly devoured his food. He advised them to eat in moderation, explaining that there was no more food left to share. Despite the bucket brimming with contents positioned right beside him, with a triumphant shout, Colts finally unveiled his name, granting the kid permission to address him as such from that moment forward. With a cheerful demeanor, he declared that he would fetch another goblin to roast additional meat as soon as they arrived at the training grounds. The carriages cautiously navigated through a treacherous region, their wheels clattering ominously against the cobblestones. Determined to improve, the protagonist relentlessly continued his training. He gradually expanded his cursed energy with each passing day. The knight, proclaiming himself a monster, quickly dismisses any inquiry as to his words with a firm denial. Curiosity sparked within the child as he inquired whether, upon the completion of this mission, the man would return to his previous occupation. As a candidate for the prestigious title of Giant Knight, he proudly belonged to the esteemed black class. A few moments of silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken words. Colts reluctantly confesses that he has lost his job. During a critical mission, the kingdom of Roget launched a sudden ambush against them. Defying the retreat order, he resolutely chose to stay behind in a bid to rescue a friend. Ultimately, no one was rescued, and the giant met its demise, making dismissal an inevitable outcome. He remarked that losing a giant felt as devastating as a bird stripped of its wings. The young boy knew he had to tread carefully. He vowed never to repeat that mistake again. The protagonist observed the knight as he strode away, his silhouette gradually fading into the distance. The protagonist experiences a wave of nostalgia. Despite the request to cease training the knight, he resolutely chose to disregard it. When pressed for answers, he claims to be merely stretching, but David insists that he should put on his clothes. Suddenly, something outside captured their attention, leaving both of them gazing out the window in astonishment, their mouths agape. Workers busied themselves, meticulously aligning various items with precision. The protagonist soon discovers that their journey has concluded, revealing the imposing thriving giant knight training center before them. From his vantage point atop the carriage, he peered down. Kong identifies the formidable giant known as Colossus. Endowed with celestial abilities, Colts emerged, presenting a document that confirmed the boy's status as a knight selected by the Baron. The protagonist stood in awe, captivated by the sight of a giant looming before him. The protagonist comes to a startling realization that he has grown to the immense size of a 3-story building. It appeared more as a living beast than as a mere machine. A white-haired man emerged from the depths of the giant's interior. The protagonist, Raphael White, wielded a formidable cursed energy measured at an impressive 2,973 pins. The protagonist assesses that the man's abilities rival those of seasoned knights. As he rose to his feet, the man seized the document with authority and commanded all the recruits to arrange themselves in a straight line. Guillaume sprinted forward, urgency propelling him into action. He intended to seize his. He located the specific area. He gazes curiously at the individuals occupying the stands, pondering their identities. The operators of the colossal machine. He began to place wagers on the number of rookies who would successfully navigate their way through. Raphael greeted the assembled crowd warmly, confidently introducing himself as their training instructor. He asserted that the boys' performance would determine their future prospects. Stunned, the protagonist realized that the entrance test involved boarding a massive giant and taking flight. A wave of discontent swept through the crowd as they voiced their frustration, lamenting that no one had given them a warning. Kong clenched his fists in silence, struggling to contain the fury boiling within him as laughter echoed from the spectators. He vows that one day he will make everyone who laughs pay for their mockery. A stranger approached him, inquiring whether he hailed from the outskirts due to the peculiar unevenness of his face. He turned his gaze and encountered a young woman who introduced herself as Rowan Yellow. Enchanted by her presence, he responded with his own introduction. The knight clarified that taking off involved boarding the giant, descending into its depths, and powering it up. She asserted that her explanation was necessary, assuming a child raised in poverty might lack such knowledge. With a hint of drool escaping his lips, the protagonist ponders whether this moment qualifies as their initial encounter. However, the girl intervenes, halting his approach as she continues to elaborate. She explained that when one places their hand upon the cabin floor, the pilot's cursed energy merges with the giant, igniting a powerful spark. In that pivotal moment, he understood that enduring the pressure and rising to the challenge was essential for his passage. Curious about the phenomenon of sinking, he probes further and discovers that the giant mimics his every movement. The protagonist realized that the gaze of the imposing figure would mirror his own. Rowan endeavored to maintain an optimistic outlook, confidently assuring those around her that everything would turn out just fine. He expressed his gratitude and inquired about the source of her knowledge, to which she revealed that her family places a strong emphasis on education. She suggested that he observe the competition, noting that 4 individuals, including themselves, possessed considerable strength. Karold loomed impressively, his massive stature commanding attention, and Harklux appeared, standing resolutely in the scene. He exuded an aura brimming with cursed energy, his intense focus evident in every detail. On the stage, the spotlight illuminated the performers, casting a vibrant glow over their poised figures. The instructor reminded the class that the possibility of injury loomed over their activities, or even perish in the endeavor. The intense pressure experienced during the onset of takeoff enveloped him. They must remain composed and assess their own feelings to determine the appropriate moment to withdraw their hand and cease. He proclaimed that only those of exceptional caliber could rise to become a giant knight. He believed that failure was not something to be ashamed of. It became evident that the giants served as formidable weapons, crafted from the very essence and wisdom of the gods themselves. The first candidate positioned both hands firmly against the floor. A surge of excitement coursed through him as he recognized that his efforts were finally paying off. The protagonist observed the unfolding events with keen attention. He remarked that it reminded him of the breathing techniques. In his past life, the protagonist had relied on the expertise of fighter pilots to expertly navigate the aircraft's acceleration. Inside the colossal being, the man erupted in a frantic scream as his eyes rolled back in terror. After a few minutes, he reluctantly withdrew his hands, pleading for the ordeal to cease. Raphael acknowledged that despite his resignation, he had already earned the title of knight by recognizing the true value of his life. He was hoisted up and carried out by his companions. Observing the scene, he concluded that everyone present must have wielded demon stones like he had, yet they still seemed to be facing significant challenges. Next, the spotlight shifted to Karold. The protagonist embarks on the journey. He struggles to endure the mounting pressure. As anticipated from a formidable contender, the takeoff proceeded flawlessly. He lifted his arm. The giant mirrored the action with a deliberate motion. Leaping to his feet, the instructor resolved to mount one of the larger creatures. He congratulated Karold and instructed him to defend against the incoming attack. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd as they began questioning whether he was truly poised to assault a student. Demonstrating his resolve, Raphael launched into a swift run. As he drew nearer, he unleashed a powerful punch. He bursts into laughter upon witnessing Karold crash to the ground. Kong pondered the purpose behind the harsh treatment, swiftly concluding it was a deliberate tactic designed to undermine the newcomer's morale from the outset. Determined to assert his presence, he resolved to be the first to demonstrate just who they were up against. The next candidate was summoned to step forward. After a few minutes of watching, the spectators began to murmur among themselves, suggesting that he should consider quitting. Without warning, the child stumbled and crashed face first onto the ground. Panic erupted as the crowd began to shout that it was an emergency. The White Knights swiftly ascended the towering giant, determined to extract him from his precarious position. One of them emerged to solemnly announce the tragic news of his passing. The protagonist questions whether he possesses the capability to achieve this task. He perceives a shift in the entire atmosphere. The remaining individuals poised to take action were perceived by others as strong and courageous, embodying a fearless spirit in the face of potential failure. Harklux resolves that he will take his turn next. He approached with the casual confidence of someone who engaged in this routine daily. The colossal structure illuminated brilliantly in a swift minute and 40 seconds. The crowd erupted in jubilant applause, celebrating the child's remarkable achievement. Rowan glanced at Jane, a confident smile playing on his lips as he declared, "I told you he was good." The redhead braced himself, preparing to counter Raphael's impending strike. The impending moment approached with each passing second. He skillfully intercepts the incoming kick. The instructor chuckled heartily before launching another assault. However, this moment, he strikes with precision, landing 4 impeccable hits in swift succession. The protagonist waited patiently, lingering in anticipation for what was to come next. The kid collapsed to the ground, his resilience evident as he praised himself before signaling for the next challenge. The protagonist found it utterly absurd to see all his hard-earned success being wiped away, igniting a fiery anger within him. He uttered a curse. He vowed to ensure that Raphael would experience a bitterness so profound it would linger in his memory forever. David sat high in the stands, observing the scene unfold below. Without warning, he collided with someone unexpectedly. A young man chuckled as he referred to him as Old Man, his laughter punctuating the playful apology. In the distance, the two fools began to chatter about how the man appeared too aged to serve as a squire, pondering aloud the sanity of the knight who had chosen him. Seething with rage, the captain instructed them to reiterate their previous statements, a request that provided no clarity whatsoever. 2 men positioned slightly ahead reprimanded the foolish individuals. The boy clad in a yellow shirt suddenly adopted an aggressive demeanor, proclaiming himself to be the squire of a noble white knight. He realized that this place resembled a jungle where only the strongest thrived and the weak, like him, should simply submit. The protagonist's second father contemplates whether enduring the current situation is more challenging than toiling for 15 consecutive hours in a factory. Suddenly, a chilling memory washed over him, the haunting image of people plunging into the smelting furnace, lifeless and consumed by the flames. Fueled by unwavering faith in his knight's potential, he boldly confronts the bullies, declaring that the top ranking will not be theirs for the taking. Without a moment's pause, he proposes a wager. Amidst their laughter, the squires concurred, recognizing that the silver coins would be sufficient to sustain them for an entire month. The old man marveled at the astonishing reality before him. He struggled to comprehend how they could deplete 5 coins in a mere month, an amount he had painstakingly accumulated over the course of his entire life. Determined to take a leap of faith, he resolves to wager all that he possesses. Reflecting on the immense effort the child had been putting in, he felt a surge of admiration. Kultz observed the unfolding events from afar, his gaze keenly fixated on every detail. Meanwhile, Rowan engaged in a discussion about his fellow knights, the individuals who secured the top 2 positions in the entrance examinations. One of them was identified as Garrett Yahello. He managed to endure for an entire minute against Raphael. The other contender, Helena Yahello, not only demonstrated remarkable endurance, but also launched a counterattack in her pursuit of victory. He unexpectedly compelled the instructor to retreat. With an air of confidence, the blonde girl declared that she would be the star of the day. As she made her assertion, the protagonist took a moment to examine her stats. The protagonist harnessed an impressive 573 units of cursed energy. The protagonist deduced that she possessed great strength. However, she remained overshadowed by the other 2. This meant that if he aimed for victory, he would need to depend on his own skill. Once she secured her hair in a tight ponytail, the knight initiated the procedure, successfully completing the launch in just 1 minute and 20 seconds. The instructor launched a fierce assault. However, she evades effortlessly with a great grace that captivates onlookers. He found himself reflecting on the events that had transpired. The countdown stood at a mere 45 seconds. She skillfully fended off 17 relentless assaults before ultimately succumbing to defeat. He prepared himself, bracing for what lay ahead. Kong realizes that once Raphael makes his move, the game will effectively reach its conclusion. Given his extensive experience, he contemplates whether he possesses the power to alter that reality. With a cursed energy level of 107, the young boy chose to stretch his limbs. He pondered the sudden halt in his energy growth, which had stagnated once he reached the hundreds. The instructor summoned the class's attention. He attempts to concentrate on the understanding that a battle involves more than mere statistics. Mastering the art of combat requires and experiencing a stroke of good fortune. It became clear to him that victory was within reach. Jin Yun finally strides into the colossal structure, filled with anticipation. His friends exchanged anxious glances, their unease palpable in the air. Inside the building, a world of intrigue awaited. He caught the sweet, fruity aroma of strawberry juice wafting through the air. A blend of iron and oil coalesced into a potent mixture. The massive door creaked shut, sealing off the space behind it with a finality that echoed through the silence. Despite the overwhelming tightness of the space, he felt as though he was trapped in an infinite universe, suspended beyond the grasp of darkness. Bereft of any guidance, he inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with air. He begins to lower himself with deliberate intent. A palpable shift occurs as he presses both hands firmly against the floor. Overwhelmed by the mounting pressure, he likened the experience to performing squats with a staggering weight of 200 kilos. He inhales deeply, filling his lungs with air. He focused intently, engaging his lower abs to expertly manage the weight. After a brief moment of contemplation, he discerns that deeper complexities lie beneath the surface of his physical sensations. It felt as though his very soul was being pulled into the abyss. He suddenly realizes the giant exerted a vacuum-like force, drawing him inexorably closer. Anchoring himself firmly, he resolves to allow every last drop of mana to be drained from his body. Until that moment arrived, out of nowhere, he finally senses the resolute heartbeat of the giant reverberating within him. Jian resolves to exert all his strength in one decisive motion, determined not to squander any energy. After a relentless bout of exertion and uproar, the big guy's eyes shimmered with excitement. The atmosphere buzzed with jubilation as everyone reveled in his accomplishment. He accomplished the task in less than a minute. Within the confines of the space, the young man was utterly astonished. The giant's imposing figure dominated his entire field of vision. He expresses the sensation of liberation from a frail, vulnerable human form. This was his opportunity to surprise Raphael when he least expected it. While Raphael revels in the glory of his own achievements, he recalled that his willpower surpassed Rowan's, fueling his determination. He resolved to unleash an immense surge of power in a single, overwhelming burst. He strained his mana reserves to their breaking point. The protagonist recalled a remark from the previous evening regarding Jian that lingered in his mind. What he accomplished was nothing short of insane. This was particularly daunting for someone who had been managing the cursed stone for less than a week. Suddenly, something captured the man's attention. The instructor prepared to take off in 10 seconds, but the protagonist was resolute in his intention to strike first. As Raphael declared the commencement, excitement filled the air. The moment had slipped away, leaving him with the heavy realization that time had run out. In a single, decisive motion, the giant crashed powerfully onto the ground, shaking the very earth beneath him. The same applied to the kings. The ground lay littered with debris, remnants of a once structured environment now reduced to chaos. He soars toward the crowd. The crowd's eyes widened in astonishment. The protagonist, a newcomer to the colossal arena, had astonishingly succeeded in defeating White. He stood as a towering figure, a formidable candidate for the title of knight. The instructor stood frozen, disbelief etched across his face as his mouth hung agape. Meanwhile, the protagonist emerged from the robot, fully aware that if White regained consciousness, an attack would be imminent. With a decisive move, he swiftly concluded the fight in that moment. He denied any opportunity for a counterattack. That night, he questioned whether the boy truly intended to flee after executing such a deceitful and cowardly maneuver. The others surged forward, shouting fervently that they would impart a lesson to him. Crafting a plausible excuse, the protagonist claimed that his mana had been completely depleted. However, this revelation did nothing to quell the enthusiasm of Raphael's young admirers. The protagonist's gaze fell upon the formidable line of knights, each one a paragon of strength and valor. The spectators remarked that Day was becoming increasingly unpredictable. David shouted, desperately attempting to alert the child of impending danger. The young boy spun around. He turned and inquired whether this was a type of group celebration, questioning if they might be overexcited. overreacting. The instructor's massive hand crashed into the ground with immense force. He commanded everyone to halt in their tracks. With a swift leap, White gracefully exited the confines of the robot, stepping into the open air with a sense of purpose. As he gazed intently at the protagonist, the stranger inquired about his name. The young boy confidently presents himself to those around him. The man glanced back momentarily before turning away, declaring his refusal. He dismissed the notion entirely and instructed the others to assign the child to a dormitory. Despite their anger, the group ultimately chooses to let it go. He resolved to obey and follow his master faithfully. A wave of relief washed over him. Kong settled onto the ground, his voice tinged with a mix of fear and realization as he expressed the terror that gripped him at the thought of battling something so formidable it could extinguish a life in an instant. The experience was exhilarating, for when his mana depleted, it transformed the entire world around him. As he delved deeper into the experience, he felt his body and mind dissolve, as if he were reaching out to touch the divine. As he examined various cults, having concluded that a second chance at life offered no potential for loss, he resolved to gamble everything he possessed. The scene reveals the group of men who had placed a wager with the captain. He found himself pondering how a newcomer could achieve such an impressive feat. One of them turned and remarked that it might have simply been a stroke of luck. When the question about the bet arose, the squire clad in the red shirt boldly suggested that should the old man arrive to collect, they could simply overpower him. In agreement, another individual chimed in, suggesting that everyone should evacuate as soon as possible. However, unbeknownst to them, a formidable obstacle stands resolutely in their way. The protagonist boldly introduced himself, sending a shiver down the spines of the bullies as they recoiled in fear. They stood frozen in place as the realization washed over them that they were standing directly in front. The imposing figure of a black knight emerged, shrouded in an aura of mystery and foreboding. Chuckling, the man remarked that he had shared several meals. He accompanied David, sharing a carriage ride with the elderly gentleman. It would be in the best interest of the young punks to adhere to the established rules of the game. Terror gripped the group as they frantically contemplated their escape from the harrowing situation. As the man spoke of his impressive abilities, a charming smile adorned his face. The bullies sprinted towards the captain, their feet pounding against the ground as they dashed away. They stood prepared to relinquish even the clothes on their backs if he desired it. Isolated in solitude, the knight reflects on the past, inviting others to journey alongside him through his memories. The scene shifted back to the fateful day of the ambush, where tension hung heavy in the air. The situation escalated, compelling everyone to evacuate. A soldier urged him to hasten and take cover in the bunker without delay. However, he resolutely chooses to disregard the advice and sets off in the opposite direction. As the crowd erupted in desperate cries for his return, the knight within the colossal being fervently prayed that someone could endure just a bit longer. However, he arrives just in time to discover that it is already too late. The following day, the leader sternly reminded him that there would be consequences for breaking the rules. He warns that challenges of that nature often result in dismissal. Faced with no other options, he found himself at a crossroads. Colt simply acquiesces to the situation. He headed directly towards his colossal companion. With a heavy heart, he expressed his regret, acknowledging his inability to safeguard anyone. He expresses his gratitude for the time they spent as partners. In the present moment, David's eyes widened in astonishment as he discovered he had won a staggering 90 silver coins. With his eyes gleaming with intensity, he confessed that he feared losing everything due to a foolish wager. Tien approached with curiosity, inquiring about the origins of the substantial amount of money and the identities of the men who had just departed. The protagonist beamed with delight. The old man bestowed upon him a pouch containing 45 silver coins, remarking that knights typically carried wealth tucked away in every pocket. Without warning, a soldier arrived, announcing his presence as the escort tasked with leading the young boy to the barracks. The young boy inquired. He instructed someone to hold on for a moment. He strides toward the Black Knight, who sits in contemplation, pondering whether circumstances might have unfolded in an alternative manner. He pivoted sharply. The man declared that his mission concluded at that point. Despite his uncertainty about the outcome, he pressed on. The protagonist resolves to give it a shot despite the uncertainty. It seems that there is no content provided to convert. Please provide a specific line or passage that you would like transformed into a professional third-person narrative script. He extended an invitation to Colt, urging him to join. Furious, the knight demanded to know if the children had lost their minds. To demonstrate his innocence, the boy confidently presents the money he had just received as a down payment. He confidently declared that he would have him crafting a giant once more. Shielding his face with his hand, the man confessed that he had already defied orders once and vowed never to repeat such an act. However, the protagonist firmly believes that no rule can endure indefinitely, and he is determined to rewrite them if necessary. He then inquired inquired whether the knight held faith in him. The results revealed that among the 500 yellow knights, only 78 successfully passed a rigorous entrance test. With enthusiasm bubbling within him, Rowan announced that the location beneath the boss's office tower was known as Sky Restaurant. As they ascended the stairs, an infectious excitement buzzed among the other students, all eager to sample the food. At the summit, the blonde girl approached the barrier, her gaze fixated on the breathtaking sunset unfolding before her. He absorbed the sights and sounds of his surroundings, fully immersing himself in the environment. Suddenly, a voice pierced through the air, announcing that it was strictly prohibited to exit the restaurant and market area. Additionally, the rules allowed for unlimited eating. However, if anyone dared to arrive late, he would ensure they expelled every morsel consumed. After careful consideration, the protagonist deduced that the dark man likely possessed a menu beneficial for magical growth. The instructor's eyes lit up with recognition as he identified the boy who had left a lasting impression on Raphael. As everyone joyfully helped themselves, a thunderous crash echoed through the air, shattering the stillness of the moment. After forcefully slamming Harclux to the ground, Juret inquired whether they could not enjoy their meal in peace. The redhead inquired about the reasons behind his actions. Juret commanded him to lower his gaze, revealing his awareness of the young man's bourgeois origins. Fueled by anger, the boy rose to his feet, ready to confront his opponent. However, he misses his initial strike. He retaliates without any cost to himself. Gazing down at the boy sprawled on the floor, the blonde individual remarked that he should understand his position and that not all yellow knights were created equal. This action ignited a surge among the other knights, prompting them to advance forward with determination. He questioned who he believed himself to be. Juret firmly insisted that they should remain silent. He resumes his relentless assault, striking down his opponents with unyielding force. Alone, he skillfully manages all the men. He struck Harclux once more, exploiting the flaw in his opponent's footwork that betrayed his position. He pressed his foot firmly against the child's head, asserting dominance in the tense moment. The bully commanded the attention of the crowd, particularly singling out those who struggled with even the fundamentals of mathematics. He declared his intention to demonstrate the stark realities of class difference. The crowd swiftly comprehended that the act was a deliberate provocation directed at Kong. His thoughts drifted elsewhere, consumed by entirely different matters. Inside the director's office, Colts pointedly remarked about the commotion resonating around them. However, the director calmly remarked that it was merely a minor altercation. The conversation soon shifted to focus on the protagonist. The Black Knight remarked that the boy had no need for training at all. In a breathtaking display of determination, he expended every ounce of his mana in a singular, powerful moment. With a chuckle, the director inquired if he hailed from the bourgeoisie. He confidently claims that he possesses extraordinary talent. With a seamless shift in topic, he inquired about the reasoning behind Black's renewed request for the assistant instructor position. He pondered if it was influenced by the boy's presence. The scene shifts back to the past, where a young boy boldly proposed that the knight become his squire, fully aware of the implications such a request entailed. The boy admitted with uncertainty that he truly had no idea whether his plan would succeed. From that moment onward, he would begin to piece everything together. Colts urged him to hold onto the money. He praises him as a genius. He explained that unleashing all one's power in a single moment was a technique mastered by the legendary giant knight Herping Gallius. The revelation that the boy could not possibly have known such intricacies suggested a remarkable ability to sense and manipulate cursed energy with flawless precision. Contemplating all the knowledge he had gathered about bodybuilding, he delved deep into his thoughts. He came to the realization that cursed energy was an entirely distinct force. The protagonist pondered the paradox of achieving perfect control, especially since the knight had declared such a feat impossible. Concluding the dialogue, the man expressed his need for additional time to contemplate. Returning to the present moment, the director inquired whether he intended to remain and supervise the boy before presenting him with the instructor badge. He remarked that it was a fortunate occurrence. As the man exited the room, a wave of déjà vu washed over Colts, stirring memories he couldn't quite grasp. Returning to the bustling restaurant area, Gion suddenly understands that Gerald possesses an astonishing level of 669 cursed energy. He possessed physical strength that surpassed his own by fourfold. With his extraordinary combat skills, defeating him seemed an insurmountable challenge. Upon noticing the child attempting to sneak away, Rowan attempts to intervene, but the protagonist confidently asserts that he understands the blonde's motivations stem from his own placement of third in the test. He realized that his priority must shift towards amplifying his cursed energy. The protagonist had no intention of provoking a confrontation with a member of the elite class. The protagonist begins his journey. He scrutinized the array of dishes laid out before him. As the blonde girl pondered the reasons behind his reluctance to engage in the battle, meal, her curiosity deepened. The protagonist found himself astonished by the revelation that he would have to consume a staggering 10 kilos of pork to achieve the necessary level of cursed energy. He began to ponder the abundance of light mana in the food surrounding him, questioning the very essence of spirituality itself. Suddenly, a notification appeared on the screen, indicating that there was a new statistic available. The protagonist's interest was piqued. He discovers that while a high level of spirituality significantly enhances spell resistance, an excess can dull his cursed energy. He concluded that spirituality resembled excess weight, while light mana could be compared to carbohydrates. The most formidable adversaries in the pursuit of maintaining fitness loom large. After some time had passed, the unexpected turn of events left everyone astonished. The protagonist was intrigued to witness Kong taking action for a change. To his surprise, he had abandoned the restaurant's meal in favor of goblin meat. He possesses the ability to steer clear of carbohydrates. It was clear that the inhabitants remained unaware of what steps they ought to take. As the protagonist joyfully indulged in his meal, he declared his intention to demonstrate the remarkable benefits of a well-balanced diet to everyone around him. With a hint of curiosity, Rowan inquires whether he truly intends to indulge in that. The atmosphere was infused with an enticing array of delectable dishes. Upon his agreement, she enthusiastically remarked that a night's diet was meant to be a heavenly experience. In response, the protagonist vehemently protested, declaring that the food was packed with carbs and resembled a total calorie bomb. The knight, bewildered by the unfamiliar phrase, felt a surge of indignation as he firmly declared his refusal to share his meat. It seems the input is incomplete. Please provide a full line for me to transform into a professional third-person narrative. The blonde noticed the instructor and promptly informed him about the man's actions. Kultz approached confidently, declaring that consuming goblin meat was a normal practice for him. He reaches out in an attempt to seize some. As he turned to face his audience, the protagonist declared that a single serving required 2 silver coins. However, for him, it would amount to 3. As he sat in the carriage, a promise lingered unfulfilled. He had vowed to buy him a creature, yet that pledge remained unacted upon. The knight bellowed in outrage, declaring that it was a blatant ripoff. However, the man insists that the price is entirely justified, as he is the one preparing the meal. The man relented, surrendering the coins into waiting hands. He inquired. He ordered 2 servings. Rowan lifted 2 coins, her eyes glimmering with curiosity as she confessed that she couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. Happy diligently attends to everyone's needs, including those of Captain David. As the scene unfolded, the other knights exchanged bewildered glances, their confusion palpable as they wondered what was happening. Several hours later, Kong comes to the realization that his increasing energy demands a greater intake of meat. At this pace, his supply was dwindling rapidly, particularly with the growing demand from those eager to get their hands on it. A sudden shift in the atmosphere caught everyone's attention. He experienced an odd, tickling sensation and found himself questioning what was unfolding around him. Given that Kultz possesses the extraordinary gift of victory, he speculated that perhaps he possessed some crucial knowledge. He inquired about the source of that formidable power. The knight expressed his belief that a true gift cannot be simply taken at one's convenience. He found himself lacking the motivation to engage in the task at hand. Intrigued, the boy inquired whether it could have been fire or water instead. However, the man firmly declines, explaining that the gift aligns with one's deepest subconscious desires, revealing that he has harbored feelings for Wendy since childhood. He began to reflect on his deepest aspirations, yearning to grow larger and more powerful, ultimately striving to fulfill the dreams that had eluded him in his previous life. Black elaborated on the potential to enhance the manifestation of one's abilities, sharing his own journey from summoning merely a gentle breeze to achieving greater control through concentration and creativity. He had gained the extraordinary ability to summon storms and maneuver his body through the air with the grace of a leaf dancing in the wind. Ronan inquired about Jion's keen interest, questioning why one would pursue a gift when merely wanting it should suffice. Seizing the opportunity to steer the conversation in a different direction, she inquired of the instructor whether he had any advice regarding the equipment. The assignment ceremony commenced with an air of anticipation, as attendees gathered to witness the selection that would shape their destinies. Kultz announced that during the ceremony, a giant would be selected for usage over the next 3 months, advising everyone to choose the one that best suited their needs based on technical specifications. He contemplated whether the joints exhibited any signs of wear, because it disrupts the harmony. The blonde expressed her gratitude to him. Suddenly, the protagonist erupted with excitement, declaring that he had finally reached a weight of 2 kilograms. This signaled that it was time for him to replenish his energy reserves with some carbohydrates. He felt a surge of pure strength coursing through his body. As he sampled the dishes from the restaurant, he was taken aback by the dreadful flavor, prompting him to voice his complaints. As Ronan grappled with his feelings, he pondered the question of whether he truly enjoyed it or not. Under the cloak of night, the protagonist made his way back to the cabin, the familiar surroundings beckoning him home. After assisting the servants in erecting the tents, recalling Cult's acceptance of his proposal, the protagonist resolved to ensure he wouldn't disappoint him. He clutched the stone tightly in his hand. He steeled his mind, striving to concentrate amidst the distractions surrounding him. He envisioned the true essence of the gift he yearned to cultivate. The status windows remained inadequate for his needs. He realized he required a tool that would enhance his training sessions. He sought a means to harmonize his movements while also revealing which muscles were developing optimally. He evaluated which aspects required further improvement. The protagonist's, his wish was to witness cursed energy and spiritual energy with his own eyes. As events unfolded in real time, it felt as though his body was perpetually positioned before a mirror, reflecting every nuance and detail. Moments later, a notification appeared, indicating that his gift was beginning to evolve. John begins to perceive the dark mana he had previously absorbed, accompanied by a gentle flow of light mana. Moreover, he had gained the remarkable ability to regulate the amount of mana he absorbed. He suddenly felt a sharp pang of pain coursing through him. He felt a surge of happiness as he reflected on the situation. The protagonist recognized that such pain signified growth, as it directed essential protein to precisely the right muscles. This signified the end of wastefulness and inefficiency, ushering in a new era of streamlined productivity. The growth was pure, relentless, and bore an almost demonic quality. The protagonist uncovers the existence of the kingdom of Ringcall. The environment proved to be unforgiving, presenting an utterly inhospitable setting for human existence. Nonetheless, humanity persevered, constructing vibrant cities and venturing into uncharted territories. At the training center, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation and energy. The knights meticulously prepared themselves for the impending ceremony, donning their polished armor and gathering in ceremonial formation. With a commanding voice, Baron Harun Basio proclaimed his authority as the commander present, revealing that more than 300 giants resided in the vicinity. Even if it was merely for a brief span of 3 months, the protagonist emphasized that everyone must not forget those giants were constructed from second-hand materials. Their performance faltered, falling short of the standards set by those utilized in the heat of battle. However, the caliber of those giants demonstrates significant variation. When the components align seamlessly, they culminate in a remarkable and intricate machine. Calt suspects that the man is embellishing the truth. The director announced that this ceremony presented them with an opportunity to discover the giant whose mana resonated most harmoniously with theirs. Helena ascended to the stage first, having secured the coveted top position in the entrance exam. Basio urged her to make a thoughtful decision. The rules dictated that the top 3 scorers would take their turns sequentially. She came to a halt before a towering structure, its immense size looming over her. He begins to examine it carefully, scrutinizing every detail with keen interest. Standing to the side, the commander confidently asserts to Black that she surpasses Geralt in skill. Yet she remained an enigma, a figure unknown to all around her. He confidently asserted that she would undoubtedly choose the most exceptional training giant. After a short passage of time, Helena made her way to the 10th floor. He surprises everyone by selecting a colossal opponent. He boasted impressive proportions, complemented by expertly crafted armor plating that enhanced his efficiency in battle. Within the confines of the room, she offered a radiant smile. As the crowd buzzed with excitement, they unanimously agreed that the latest machine surpassed its 10 predecessors. Once she emerged and confidently showcased herself, now it was Guillaume's turn, who had come to symbolize a mere trophy in this unfolding drama. With the keen eyes of every knight fixed upon him, realizing that he stood no chance against the girl, he understood that his efforts would yield only a couple of attempts at best. He begins to stride forward with purpose. Kaltz pondered the reason behind the man's aimless wandering. Meanwhile, the others grew increasingly frustrated by the lengthy delay he was causing. The protagonist meticulously analyzed which giant elicited a reaction from his head mana. The intensity of the startup sound amplified his mana's resonance. He simply needs to discover the one that ignites his passion the most. Harun inquired about the sudden burst of speed from the child. The knights sprang into motion, hastily pursuing the protagonist as they raced to keep pace. At last, the young man came to a halt. Before him stood a colossal figure that infused his mana with an enchanting rhythm. Despite being constructed from commonplace components, the assembly achieved an impeccable fit. This indicated that the machine was a true masterpiece. As he initiates the launch sequence, he suddenly notices that the startup sound has changed entirely. The crowd stood in stunned silence, their minds racing with disbelief as they grappled with the impossibility of what had just occurred. He emerged from the colossal structure, stepping into the vast expanse beyond. The protagonist shouted with determination, determination that this one belonged to him. He searches intently for Kaltz. He felt as though he had edged a bit closer than before. The commander summoned Raphael, instructing him to challenge the young trainee's abilities to their utmost limits during training sessions. Until he reaches his breaking point, he must determine whether the outcome was merely a stroke of luck or if they are indeed facing a formidable monster. With a warm smile, the instructor revealed that he had been eagerly anticipating this moment. He examined the extensive data on his giant. Zhen reaches the conclusion that the instant he takes off, it would serve as an extension of his very being. He pondered whether his classmates experienced the same sense of empowerment that surged within him. The knights observed intently as the repairs were carried out. A woman descended from the towering machine, inquiring if he was the fortunate individual chosen to pilot it. Ren, the formidable leader of the maintenance team, oversaw the crucial operations for Units 1 through 10. He affirms his identity with a confident introduction, declaring that he truly considers himself a fortunate individual. She remarked that although the giant appeared ordinary at first glance, it was intriguing to note that every single part functioned in perfect harmony. She meticulously elaborates on each component, breaking it down piece by piece. She cautioned him to exercise caution, explaining that any damage to the left abdomen could result in a loss of sensory capacity. Furthermore, she emphasized the vulnerability of the lower section, where the heart resided, insisting that he must never allow anyone to strike there. Kong was astonished to learn that his machine boasted 3 times the power of the other training units. With a warm smile, the engineer inquired about the name the protagonist intended to bestow upon the robot. The protagonist mused aloud, contemplating the reality that what lay before him was not merely a machine, but essentially an entirely new body. Moments later, he proudly declared that his colossal creation would be named Pectoralis, a nod to the part of the body that every man takes pride in showcasing. The crowd swiftly disperses, each individual hastening in their own direction. He begins experimenting with their machines. Raphael declared that, from that moment forward, the knights had 1 week to acclimate to their new circumstances. Within the confines of his colossal form, Guillaume comes to the realization that an overwhelming level of output does not necessarily equate to positive results. He began to tense his muscles, struggling to suppress the rising tide of fear within him. Having experimented with several attacks, he declared his intention to harness the power of his machine. The instructor advises him to begin with lighter, repetitive training, emphasizing that cultivating steady power is far more advantageous than expending all his strength in a single burst. The protagonist expressed his gratitude for the helpful tip. He recognized that magical energy, much like muscles, had the capacity to develop at an even swifter rate. The knight had vanished from sight. The instructor resolved to return to his previous task. After completing several squats, he bursts into a sprint, propelling himself forward with determination. The spectators question whether such an action could be considered a form of self-harm. He gestured toward Harklux, who was diligently performing push-ups. Raphael advised the young boy to remain calm and not worry too much. He inquired whether all that determination had emerged following his defeat at the hands of Garrett. Harklux dismissed the accusation, revealing that his true motivation was merely curiosity about why he had been unable to land a hit on the blonde opponent. The instructor remarked that if the young student performed admirably, he would seize the opportunity to exact revenge on those who had scorned him, delivering a blow that would be twice as powerful. A week later, the knights assembled, their ranks forming a formidable presence. Perched atop his machine, Raphael declared that only those who successfully navigate to the conclusion without facing elimination would be granted the prestigious last name White, thereby becoming official candidates for the esteemed title of Giant Rider. It was revealed that henceforth, the assessments would be based on 4 key criteria: endurance, progress, the ability to confront formidable foes, and overall attitude. The initial assessment evaluates their endurance in battle when subjected to extreme conditions. The second aspect emphasizes the speed with which they can maneuver past their adversaries. The third aspect examines how they confront adversaries who appear insurmountable, while the fourth delves into their potential and approach to training. The protagonist understood that a minimum of 60 points in each category was essential for passing, yet achieving a perfect score of 100 in any category would grant the advantage of waiving an entire section. The instructor remarked that no one had ever succeeded in achieving that feat. He elaborates that during the initial drill, the knights must sprint towards a flag situated 1 kilometer in the distance. The atmosphere buzzed with an air of unwavering confidence among the crowd. He bursts into motion, propelling himself forward with urgency. However, Kong quickly comes to the realization that the task at hand is far more challenging than it initially appears. Raphael forcefully shoved a fellow student to the ground. He proclaimed that he would make them experience the immense burden that the gods themselves must bear. Reflecting on his situation, the protagonist understands that in addition to overcoming all his rivals, he must also contend with the formidable White Knight. night. Raphael persistently vanquishes colossal foes, showcasing his unwavering strength and determination. As he taunted them, he derisively labeled them as feeble. This indicated that the instructors had never intended to allow them to succeed from the outset. A knight staggered, regurgitating his stomach's contents onto the ground. As the protagonist endured a relentless beating at the hands of the white-haired assailant, he found himself grappling with overwhelming despair. The instructor commanded the boy to rise. He prepared himself to learn the art of flight. The protagonist observed the unfolding chaos with a mixture of intrigue and apprehension. Jian expressed a grave concern, predicting that if things continued this way, everyone would ultimately face failure. Girard takes the lead position at the forefront. He advised that the key to success lay in understanding the rhythm of the game rather than engaging in conflict with the White Knights. As he sprinted forward, he declares that the test will reveal who possesses superior agility and sharper judgment. The protagonist recognized that merely navigating the challenging terrain was a formidable task in itself, rendering any confrontation with an instructor a futile endeavor. He was nearing his destination, the end of his journey visibly within reach. The man wielding the flag displayed a look of astonishment. He extends his hand forward. Just as Girard prepares to seize it, he was forcefully slammed into the ground, the impact reverberating through his body. The force of the impact resonated through the air. He doubles over, retching violently. As the instructor emphasized the importance of loyalty, he reiterated that one must never abandon their team. Girard instructed the man to hold on a moment and cease his assault. However, his efforts prove futile as he ultimately finds himself plunging face first into the sand. Kong meticulously observed the turmoil around him, likening his predicament to being ensnared in a muddy pit with no escape in sight. Chaos erupted as panic spread among the crowd, until Helena announces over the broadcast. The protagonist urged the knights to bond closely, for their unity held the power to achieve remarkable strength. They possessed the strength to overwhelm. Her voice sliced through the chaos, commanding attention amid the rising panic. The students began to assist one another in getting back on their feet. Seizing the initiative, she remarked that they vastly outnumbered each instructor by a ratio of 7 to 1. Small forces, when united, can transform into a formidable entity. An instructor begins to sense that something is amiss. As he pivoted, the sight of two towering giants clutching his legs came into view. Amidst the chaos of the assaults, the group valiantly fought to maintain their position. Helena instructed her teammates to arrange themselves into a 5-point star formation. They linked shoulders in groups of 10, expertly distributing the weight among themselves. Ryan positions himself on the left flank. As time progressed, the instructors gradually found themselves dwindling in options. Taking the initiative, Harkluk seized hold of the item with determination, the leg of the teacher, to disrupt his equilibrium. June acknowledged the wisdom of her decision and resolved that it was time to take action. Raphael stands as the sole survivor among them. The formation the girl had established proved to be ineffective in overpowering him. The protagonist observes that the man's waist is bare, revealing an unexpected vulnerability. As he sprinted forward, he declared his intention to channel all his strength into the impending attack. The challenge arose when the instructor awaited his arrival. He executed a perfect landing. He struck out, questioning whether the child truly believed he could be deceived by the same ruse a second time. The boy crashes to the ground. The instructor stood before the class, ready to impart knowledge and guide the eager students. He seized his arm with a firm grip. With unexpected turns and intricate developments, the story unraveled in ways that kept everyone on their toes. With a powerful motion, he thrusts his colossal opponent back to the ground once more. After careful contemplation, the young man asserted that any Korean reserve sergeant would grasp the significance of that test. The focus centered on compelling them to collaborate as a cohesive unit. They needed to eliminate Raphael swiftly if they hoped to secure victory. While the others were preoccupied, Jen resolves to embark on the risky endeavor by herself and eliminate the primary adversary. The instructor inquired whether he was already feeling fatigued and advised him to replenish his energy. He relishes the thrill of overpowering his opponents. He clutched his leg tightly, demonstrating that he still had more to prove. He activated the giant's overclock, intensifying the pressure weight to unprecedented levels. He aimed to prevent his opponent from advancing. Frustration coursed through him. The white-haired man warned him to release his leg if he wished to avoid injury. As kicks struck forcefully against his cockpit, the protagonist begins to feel a surge of overwhelming emotions. He resolves to endure the pain, believing it more bearable than the anguish of being struck in the heart. Determined and steadfast, he clung tightly to Raphael's leg, refusing to release his grip. The instructor, visibly irritated, he cautioned that if he were to damage the child's giant, the costs of repairs would pose a significant issue. The other knights observe Raphael's fatigue, prompting Helena to declare that it is time time to confront the situation at hand. Everyone rushed into the room, but Kong remained suspended from the instructor's grip. Yelling, he declared that his hands remained unbound and free. He began to stir up a swirling cloud of dust as he kicked the ground beneath him. With limited options to further compel the giant to retreat, he found himself at a standstill. The instructor relentlessly hurled punches, yet ultimately found himself overwhelmed and consumed by the 70 machines. As the knights arrived at the flag, a wave of triumph swept over them, igniting jubilant celebrations for their hard-fought victory. On the ground, the instructor declared that he would overlook the mistake, recognizing that it was merely the start of their journey. He eagerly anticipates witnessing the extent of Kang's potential. The young man emerged from his colossal vehicle, having been guided out by his companions. He stepped forward, earning a flurry of accolades for his remarkable actions. With his mana nearly depleted, he felt a surge of satisfaction from having triumphed over an opponent 15 times. Helena approached him, expressing her gratitude for his actions. However, the protagonist asserts that she was the true star of the day. Meanwhile, she pondered, candidly recognizing that she was merely he was a coward, desperately attempting to evade the specter of failure. Setting her fear aside, she vowed that next time, she would be the first to confront the strongest opponent. Ron arrived, enveloping the protagonist in a warm embrace as he offered his heartfelt congratulations. The spotlight shifted to Harklux, signaling the beginning of his segment. He stepped forward and introduced himself. The child spoke up, expressing his thoughts. The display was nothing short of remarkable. A short distance away, Raphael berated the White Knights who had been vanquished. He claimed that he allowed the students to emerge victorious, implying that he was the sole participant who had not faced defeat. The group hurriedly dispersed, each person eager to prepare as instructed. The instructor, standing alone, remarked that the experience had been enjoyable. He shouted at the knights, commanding them to return to their giants, as the training was far from finished. The air was thick with a shared sentiment of fatigue as the group unanimously expressed their exhaustion. However, he confidently asserted that they had yet to witness anything. As John sprinted forward, uncertainty gnawed at him, prompting a silent question of whether this was truly acceptable. Particularly distressing was the sight of a fallen knight being mercilessly kicked by the instructor. The other teacher, standing by the flag, informed the students that after they struck the target, they would be required to complete another lap. Time and time again, a man suddenly loses consciousness and is promptly lifted away by his companions. Raphael expressed his concern that this would severely impact their endurance score. Seething with anger, the protagonist declared that it was nothing short of abusive. He understood that such reckless exertion would not contribute to building muscle. He couldn't even begin to comprehend cursed energy. However, it seemed that the instructors had no intention of halting their relentless pace. The scene unveiled a stark expanse of white, captivating in its purity. The knights diligently honed their skills, all the while deriding those who stumbled in their endeavors. Harklux ultimately finds himself tumbling to the ground. The protagonist extended a hand, assisting his friend to regain his footing. Expressing his gratitude, the guy urged him to continue on his way as well. King firmly holds the belief that enduring pain intense enough to be life-threatening imprints lasting trauma on the soul. He deduced that the teacher aimed to ensure that only those born with strength would successfully pass through the challenges ahead. Raphael observed the young man, who remained motionless in his stance. He inquired about the situation unfolding before him. Determined to evolve, the young boy begins the process of desynchronization. He ultimately loses his lunch, unable to keep it down. He crashed to the ground with a resounding thud. This revelation astonished the instructor. In a manner akin to his fellow knights, John stirred awake in his dormitory, a sense of satisfaction washing over him as he noted that his magic power level had risen to an impressive 204. After a rejuvenating period of rest, he emerged refreshed and ready to face the challenges ahead. Rising to his feet, he acknowledged that adhering to the training regimen would present a formidable challenge. With a well-structured schedule in place, he realized that his growth could potentially triple. Colt entered the room, his curiosity piqued by the sound of laughter emanating from the child. He mentioned that he had asked him for a surprise, but hesitant to startle him in such a manner. The protagonist asserts that there is a purpose behind all of these events. When questioned about his return to the training field, he paused. He declared his intention to prioritize eating and sleeping. If the man was eager to savor some goblin meat, he would need to accompany him. 2 weeks later, David inquired about the thoughts occupying the child's mind. The protagonist observed him devouring his meal, acutely aware of the myriad eyes focused intently upon him. Kung urged him to set aside his worries and simply enjoy his meal as well. As a squire, he understood the necessity of possessing at least a modicum of fighting skill. As he observed his classmates engage in training, the boy couldn't help but think that the instructors were. He contemplates whether to choose the more cautious path. He faced the the daunting choice of either holding back or risking his cursed energy, pushing it to its absolute limit. He concluded, acknowledging that his primary need at the moment was simply to eat. He aimed to cultivate both strength and vitality. The knights concluded their training and, upon spotting the protagonist, they inquired whether he intended to take another break. They suggested that it might be wiser for him to simply resign at this point. Garrett's face brightened with joy upon receiving the news. Within the confines of his office, Harun remarked that Jaeun had transformed from a brilliant prodigy into an indolent figure seemingly overnight. That night, the protagonist guided David on how to properly hold an energy stone while demonstrating the technique for executing squats. He initiated his breathing technique, aiming to enhance intra-abdominal pressure and facilitate the lifting process while simultaneously training the region surrounding the cursed energy center, a fundamental aspect of his strength. Harun stepped into the tent, his voice laced with confusion as he demanded to know what was happening. She then announced that the schedule for personal evaluations had just been revealed. Those who fail to meet the requirements face immediate expulsion. Undeterred, he presses on, diligently focusing on strengthening his core. In the confines of his room, Harun inquired of Raphael his thoughts regarding the forthcoming mission. Raphael remarked that the majority of the instructors were firmly convinced that the cadets would achieve dismal scores. However, when inquiries arose regarding the king, he confidently asserts that he cannot imagine losing to anyone. Harun pointed out that this was the root of the problem. The protagonist came to the unsettling realization that the child was intentionally avoiding training, as if he were mocking him directly. Such behavior would not be tolerated. His plan was to expel him, particularly since he had significantly declined in performance. He pivoted on his heels and inquired of Calls for his opinion. Calls nonchalantly instructed the director to proceed as he deemed fit, leaving Harun taken aback by the unexpected display of trust. He remarked that he did not believe the child was being lazy merely out of choice. Basio concluded that he still had something significant to demonstrate. Returning to the training field, the white-haired figure announced that in this round, all 78 participants would clash simultaneously, with 14 destined to be eliminated. Then, the remaining participants would be divided into 2 teams for a tournament-style endurance challenge. The rules were straightforward. If a giant's back touched the ground, that competitor was eliminated from the game. Forming alliances to confront an adversary was permissible. Defeating an opponent in one-on-one combat awarded the protagonist additional points. Should any cadet find dissatisfaction with their score, they had the option to challenge an instructor to a one-on-one endurance match. Upon hearing the signal, the crowd shifted into their designated places, ready for the unfolding event. The figures began to arrange themselves in a neat queue. Garrot inquired about the strategies he intended to employ in order to secure victory. He confidently declared that he wouldn't even survive the first round. Recognizing that he had been resting while the others diligently honed their skills, it seemed only just for them to join forces and target him. The knights reached a consensus, asserting that someone like him would be detrimental to the team's dynamics. He inhaled deeply, preparing himself for what lay ahead. The protagonist declared his readiness, fully anticipating the waves of hate and hostility that would follow. He initiated a private channel call. Rowan acknowledges his unwavering confidence in his own methods. At this pace, he faced the risk of being eliminated in the first round, leading him to conclude that their best chance lay in fighting together. With a smile gracing his lips, the protagonist remarked that it placed her in jeopardy as well. However, she confidently declared herself the strongest individual at the training center. Harklux entered the chat, signaling his arrival. He assures the boy that he will provide assistance and ensure he receives a thorough evaluation. Jian urged everyone to cease their concerns for him and redirect their attention towards their own well-being. Raphael embarks on the test, determination etched across his face. The knights charged toward the leader with fierce determination. Fueled by a surge of demonic energy, he radiated confidence. Without it, one would be unable to maneuver a giant or execute powerful explosive assaults. He exerted maximum pressure in his abdomen, fortifying the core of his giant physique. He channels his power into his fists, maintaining a steady flow of energy throughout the process. The protagonist delivers a crushing blow, propelling his opponent through the air. Filled with excitement, he joyfully celebrated the achievement of his first bonus point. He swiftly pursued the next target with determination. He attributed his opponent's swift falls to a fragile core. Observing the scene, the others began to question the feasibility of it all, bewildered by the fact that the child rarely engaged in training. Recognizing that his cursed energy level surpassed that of the majority of his fellow cadets, Jian confidently declared his intention to demonstrate the true essence of rigorous training. In the second round, the stakes intensified as the rules mandated that only 2 cadets could achieve the highest score. Any participant who took more than 2 steps back or faltered would face elimination. He finds it astonishingly brutal. battle. Faced with no alternatives, he presses onward, compelled to continue his journey. A determined knight lunged at him, resolute in his refusal to back down under any circumstances. As he approached the moment, anticipation coursed through him. The impact landed squarely, yet Kong stood his ground, unwavering. He remarks that the other fighter's punches lack power, attributing this weakness to his instability. Now it was his opportunity to demonstrate his skills. With a swift and decisive strike, the other giant collapsed to the ground. The protagonist savored the thrill of yet another victory. The young boy advised him to fortify his core strength. Raphael inquired of Colts about his thoughts on the main character's potential, to which Colt speculated that he might be selected in the 4th or 5th round. When a curious voice inquires whether that isn't a... As he stretches, the guy remarks that the instructor certainly has a lot to say for someone who has faced defeat twice already. He then expresses concern, noting that it will be challenging for their son to compete against cadets who possess innate talent. Following several additional rounds, a knight lunged forward, aiming to strike Jian with a powerful blow. However, it was clear that nothing transpired as he tossed away his expectations. With a powerful punch, he remarked that the man had boasted endlessly, only to end up inflicting harm upon himself. The instructors gazed in astonishment as the young competitor advanced to the quarterfinals. As he surveyed his surroundings, Raphael observed that Harklux had been soundly defeated by Gyrat. Despite being one of the most diligent workers, Harklux stood out among his peers. After careful consideration, he concluded that the evaluation process was evidently biased against the Yakman cadets. The protagonist recognized the daunting challenge of defeating knights who had honed their skills for years, trained since childhood, and hailed from the outskirts. Out of nowhere, he spots Kong engaged in a fierce battle against a freeman. He suddenly recognizes that he is employing extraordinary techniques to strengthen his defensive position. He must determine the method behind his success as a cadet. Suddenly, Raphael recalled that the child had diverged from the established program, and it strikes with undeniable force. He launched a fierce assault on his opponent. The young boy triumphs once more, prompting the instructor to finally realize that his success stems from ignoring the prescribed program. The group prepared to face their final challenge. Helena and Rowan faced off in a fierce exchange, delivering 6 powerful blows to one another yet remaining resolutely on their feet. Colt suspects that the lilac-haired girl is holding back her true potential. He wonders about her origins. After enduring a powerful blow, the blonde contestant was decisively eliminated from the competition. The time had arrived for the next decisive final. The fierce clash between Kong and Gyrat unfolded with an intensity that captivated all spectators. He possessed an overwhelming amount of demonic energy, pondering the implications of his immense power. After assessing the situation, the protagonist concludes that his opponent is an insurmountable challenge. Nevertheless, he resolved to confront him regardless. He propelled himself beyond his limits. The blonde figure poised himself, bracing for the moment to unleash his inaugural punch. He executed the landing flawlessly. He declared that this place was not meant for someone of his kind, dismissing him as undeserving. Standing firm, the kid confidently asserts his place in that environment. His future was set to begin at that very moment. Regardless of the circumstances, he is determined to make his presence felt and leave an indelible mark on those around him. This signified that his adversary represented the very soil in which his roots would take hold and grow. The child surged forward, his voice ringing out in a battle cry. The item lay there, a simple yet significant presence in the midst of everything. Now, the moment had arrived for him to take his turn. Meanwhile, Raphael contemplated his long-held belief that he would be destined for the Pioneer Corps. He found himself in a realm reserved for the most extraordinary knights, yet despite his relentless efforts to surpass his limits, he never reached the destinations he sought. Now, he found himself observing the night from the very spot he occupied, immersed in the same atmosphere that surrounded him. He resolved to defy every rule, aiming to outpace everyone in his relentless pursuit of growth. Kong gauges the extent of his accumulated demonic energy. Determined, he resolved to channel all of his strength into a single, powerful fist. He struck Gyrat directly on the head with precision. He stumbled backward from the impact. The protagonist stands poised, anticipation building as he watches for the moment his opponent will inevitably falter. However, he refrains from doing so. Gyrat confidently declared that he would not be defeated by someone of that caliber. Determined to end the battle once and for all, he declared that this time he would secure victory. The moment Jaeon is struck, an explosion erupts dramatically in the distance. As the dust finally settled, onlookers were astonished to find the young boy unwavering, having successfully blocked the strike and remained steadfast on his feet. Recognizing the disadvantage he faced, he resolved to channel all his energy into one decisive punch, knowing that failure to do so would mean certain defeat. Sprinting forward with determination, he fervently hoped that this time it would succeed. Gyrat endured a brutal impact, staggering under the force of the blow. Nevertheless, he remained steadfast on his feet. The issue at hand was that the protagonist had completely exhausted his demonic energy. The protagonist surged forward with determination. The enemy declared that the battle had reached its conclusion. Unbeknownst to him, the young boy would harness sheer willpower, pushing himself forward relentlessly until the very end. He shut his eyes, bracing himself for the impending collision. However, no event transpires. The blonde-haired assailant collapsed, losing consciousness before he could complete his strike. As the group moved away with the child in their arms, a sense of bewilderment swept over everyone present, leaving them to ponder the circumstances that had led to this unexpected turn of events. Drawing in a deep breath, Kong breathed a sigh of relief, knowing he had successfully accomplished his goal. Raphael approached with a curious expression and inquired. He couldn't fathom how he had gained such strength without ever participating in the training sessions. A smile graced his lips, illuminating his face with warmth. The protagonist explained that he had simply made several decisions and conducted a thorough analysis. The protagonist sought to determine which method proved most effective from a scientific perspective. The knights were tasked with forging their own destinies, bearing the weight of responsibility for the choices they made along the way. The instructor pondered whether he had ever explored alternative paths in his life. He begins to contemplate the possibility that he is merely an ordinary soldier, distinct from the exceptional boy. Filled with joy, the young boy believed that gradually, his name would be inscribed in the annals of the kingdom and resonate throughout the entire continent. In the principal's office, Haroon was incredulous, struggling to accept that John had secured victory. He instructed the white-haired man to escort the young man to his presence. In the ensuing moments, the two adversaries prepared to confront each other. The man proclaimed that, from that moment forward, the protagonist understood that missing training sessions was strictly prohibited. The protagonist declared his ambition to graduate from the academy as the top cadet. However, achieving that goal seemed unattainable for him if he adhered to the conventional training regimen, as a daunting 5-year gap in training existed between the yokemen cadets and the freeman trainees. With a blend of skepticism and intrigue, the commander inquired whether the boy genuinely believed he could secure first place by relying solely on his own methods. Upon hearing the affirmative response, his fury intensified. He perceived a profound resemblance between himself and Guillaume. He concludes that trampling him would serve no purpose. He insists that Raphael must wholeheartedly support the boy in his training. However, Raphael would need to bear the burden of responsibility should anything go awry. As the boys exited the room, Basio turned to Celts and inquired about his thoughts. Celts remarked that such a feat would typically be deemed impossible, yet Kong was far from ordinary. The following day, the protagonist focused on developing a harmonious balance between his lower and upper body strength. Meanwhile, the scene unfolded with a sense of anticipation. The Black Knight endeavored to persuade him to comply and achieve the necessary scores. The man inquired about the boy's strategy for achieving 90 points in endurance, questioning how he expected to succeed while continually avoiding his training sessions. David confidently asserts that scoring 100 points would allow him to eliminate that category, thereby restoring balance to his situation. The child remained silent, igniting the instructor's fury with his unwavering stubbornness. The boy's determination drives him to continue his repetitions relentlessly, pushing himself until utter exhaustion sets in. He decided to take a moment to rest and regain his strength. He inquired of the knight about the weight of the bar, to which the knight responded that it was approximately 300 pounds. The protagonist then recalled that just last week, he had successfully lifted 250 pounds 10 times, and now he was preparing to lift even greater weights. The revelation alone dispelled the man's doubts, illuminating the uncertainty of his chosen path. Celts asserted that, regardless of the approach taken, greater rewards awaited. The protagonist understood that his only chance of success lay in securing either first or second place, particularly given the stringent nature of the final evaluation. They would need to push past their limits and confront genuine monsters during an exceptionally perilous mission. The protagonist acknowledges his understanding. He requests to be excused in order to return to his training. David and the knight arrive at a shared conclusion. The child seems to be utterly captivated by the allure of lifting weights. 3 months had passed since that pivotal moment. It was revealed that Jian had ascended to level 507 in demonic energy. This accomplishment positioned him as the 3rd strongest knight within the training center. Moreover, he succeeded in eclipsing Helena's ability to channel energy into a singular, powerful strike. His mastery and control remain unparalleled. Even within the ranks of the instructors, the young boy triumphed in all 5 evaluations, securing first place with remarkable skill. He began to gain recognition from everyone around him. With all preparations complete, he eagerly anticipates the day of the final evaluation, filled with a sense of excitement and uncertainty. He yearned to explore the vast vast world beyond the confines of the zone. As the day arrived, Raphael clarified that their mission served a dual purpose. It was both an evaluation and a preliminary reconnaissance task to prepare for the significant endeavor of reclaiming the land beyond the designated zone. They would need to dismantle the cores in order to eradicate the anomalies. The knights advanced purposefully towards the ominous expanse of the beast forest. The landscape revealed milder anomalies, featuring twisted trees and the occasional lurking monster. As they drew nearer to the center, tension began to mount. He ventured towards the ancient tree nestled within the heart of the forest, where he believed the core might be hidden. The greater the number of creatures they would encounter, they would need to advance cautiously, eliminating monsters from the outer perimeter before progressing further inward. The giant would meticulously document every battle, and with each monster they vanquished, their score would soar ever higher. Additionally, the group would be joined by 25 instructors, who expected strict adherence to all directives and protocols during emergencies. As the moment arrived, the giants began to stir and advance. He collided unexpectedly with Kong. Helena confidently declared her determination to emerge victorious this time. Harkluck made his entrance as well. He assured the boy that they would meet again in the Pioneer Corps. With a warm smile gracing his lips, Rowan offered the child a heartfelt wish for good luck. The boy beamed with joy, reveling in the warmth of newfound friendships and the recognition he had long yearned for. Emboldened by a surge of confidence, he proposes that they venture further into the depths of the forest. He decided to begin his task with precision, approaching it methodically rather than hastily from the edges. With no response from anyone, he begins to suspect that he has been dismissed. After a brief pause, the trio's enthusiasm ignited at the prospect of exploring together as a united front, leading them to make a collective decision to proceed cautiously until they delved into the depths, where they would embark on their exploration together. As they sprinted forward, Kong comes to the realization that the expanse before him is immense. Thanks to the radar, he perceives the terrain as if it lay effortlessly within his grasp. He cast his gaze upon the towering trees. They bore an unsettling resemblance to trolls. From a vantage point above, it became evident that enemies lurked in close proximity. He stealthily followed the boy, moving with quiet precision. As he pivoted, he detects an unfamiliar presence and increasingly ponders its origin and nature. After surveying his surroundings, Kang's keen eyes discerned the presence of 3 orcs lurking in the shadows, igniting a surge of determination within him as he prepared to engage in battle. The monsters possessed an overwhelming 1,800 units of demonic energy. Despite being 3 times older than the child, he exuded a sense of unwavering confidence, given that he carried a weapon. Thus, his inaugural hunt commences. With determination igniting his spirit, he swiftly propels himself forward, launching into a full sprint. The sudden development sent the orcs into a state of heightened vigilance. Suddenly, the creatures began to emerge from the shadows. He sprinted forward, but within moments, the protagonist triumphantly seizes the first catch. He expertly morphs it into a baseball. The group resolved to launch a counterattack. As his sensory processing unit activated, the young man felt as though time had come to a standstill. After skillfully evading the strike, he felt a surge of determination, ready to seize his moment. The monsters approached with an ominous intent. He propelled himself far into the distance, determined to remain concealed. The scene vividly illustrated the overwhelming might of a giant in all its glory. Pumped up with excitement, Kong contemplated the immense strength of the machines engaged in battle on the front lines. Rowan stood astonished by the remarkable feat he had just accomplished. Meanwhile, the others reveled in the exhilarating surge of power. They collectively agreed it was time to quicken their pace and make their way toward the center. After navigating through the dense underbrush of the forest for some time, fueled by an overwhelming sense of invincibility, the protagonist unexpectedly encounters a menacing pack of goblins. He confidently declared that he was not unarmed and inquired about their next move. He began delivering swift slaps with his left hand, showcasing both precision and unexpected force. Having triumphed over each one of them, he discovers that a concealed object lurks deeper within the shadows. He discovers that he must now confront a colossal stone giant towering at 6 meters. As he launched the first punch, the protagonist declared his intention to demonstrate the true meaning of impact. After provoking the imposing figure, he announced that it was time to step back onto the baseball field once more. The enemy surged forward, their advance fueled by aggression and intent. As he readied himself to deliver a powerful swing, the tension in the air intensified. After delivering a precise strike, Guillaume resolves to bring the confrontation to a decisive conclusion. The stone beast collapses heavily to the ground. He found himself bracing for the worst, tension coiling within him as he awaited what calamity might unfold. It becomes evident that, aside from the protagonist, all of his friends exhibited an unyielding determination, matching unleashing his own relentless drive. Fueled by unwavering resolve, he aimed to delve as deeply as possible. Later, the protagonist pondered the depths of this enigmatic place, wondering just how far it extended. Suddenly, a general broadcast erupted across the airwaves. It became evident that a group of knights was currently facing dire circumstances. Confusion enveloped Kong as he questioned the chaos unfolding outside, wondering what on earth was happening. Out of nowhere, a mysterious figure gradually emerged from the shadows of the trees. The protagonist stood resolutely as he prepared to confront the daunting challenge of facing 5 ogres alone. Despite the uncertainty swirling around him, he resolutely brushes aside his fear and declares his intention to engage in battle before contemplating the consequences, especially since it marked his inaugural encounter with such a formidable creature. He possessed an impressive reservoir of 15,000 units of demonic energy. The protagonist takes the initiative, launching into action before anyone else. With a swift and decisive strike, he drives his weapon straight through the ogre's skull, securing its head with brutal precision. To his astonishment, it demonstrated the ability to absorb the impact. Regardless, he persists in his pursuit with unwavering determination, until the monster ensnares him with a swift kick. The young man comes to the realization that his adversary possesses formidable strength, taking on the formidable blow of a giant, which inevitably created chaos in the surroundings. The protagonist understood that fending off multiple attacks simultaneously was an insurmountable challenge. Kong unleashed his overlock ability, fueling himself with a surge of enhanced power. He began unleashing a flurry of punches at anyone daring enough to approach him. Leaping into the air with vigor, he propelled himself forward. He delivered a powerful blow to an opponent who was already down on the ground. He swiftly becomes aware that an attack is imminent from behind. He boldly challenged the established protocols. He questioned the direction of the other's departure, a hint of challenge echoing in his tone. He seizes it firmly by the head. He forcefully drove it into the sturdy trunk of a tree. An ogre seized him by the waist, its powerful grip tightening around his midsection. He was compelled to rely on his elbows until only the ogres remained, standing as the last remnants of a once mighty force. Following an impressively executed series of attacks, explosions erupted in distant locations, shaking the air with their ferocity. Capturing the young man's attention, he steadies himself and contemplates the mysteries that lie beyond the dense canopy of the forest. The protagonist realized that if this was indeed a coordinated assault, it had the potential to escalate into an absolute massacre. The instructor alerted the team to a sudden anomaly that had emerged, commanding an immediate abort of the mission. The urgency of the situation compelled everyone within the forest to flee with utmost haste. It was then that they suddenly came to the realization. The forest seemed to pulsate with life, as if it were shifting and alive. One night, he found himself ensnared by roots that writhed and coiled around him like serpents. Rooted to the spot, Jian absorbed the cacophony of screams around him, contemplating how the shifting trees altered the landscape. The maps would prove to be of no value at all. He promptly began contacting the others through the radio. Fortuitously, he received a reply from Helena. Harklux and Rowan stood together. With a grin, the boy remarked that escaping would not come easily. However, if they collaborate effectively and maintain their concentration, success is within reach. The redhead inquired if everyone was ensnared. However, Jian firmly declines, asserting that there is one place that remains constant. They needed to convene at the colossal tree to obliterate the core with their own hands.